Hello my friends, welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to answer some of your questions. I have been getting some questions on YouTube and on Instagram asking how I managed to get Ozempic approved through my insurance with PCOS and insulin resistance as being the diagnosis. So I thought I would just let you know the stages that I had to go through, and maybe it'll be helpful for you on your journey in getting the medication. So let's jump right into it. Okay, my first tip to anyone trying to get this medication is go get your labs checked. Get your labs checked. I mean, getting your lipids checked, your C-peptide, your insulin levels checked. Also, it's pretty helpful to get your hormones checked and your thyroid. So all of those will kind of paint a really good picture to your provider on how severe your insulin resistance is and just kind of where you are at if you need to be treated with medication in general. So from there, I went to getting metformin because my labs came back horrible and they continued to get horrible. So the first medication that they put me on was metformin, and that is usually the standardized medication. It's a generic medication, it's cheap, so they can prescribe it pretty regularly to individuals that start to have blood sugar issues. So it's kind of the first line of defense. So if you have not been prescribed metformin and you are insulin resistant because of PCOS, that might be really hard for you to get Ozempic. And I'll just be honest with you. In my situation, I had to go through 2 other medications before I was able to get Ozempic. And that's because based on your insurance, they really want to make sure that this medication is really needed. So by trialing other medications, it just supports the reason why they should be approving Ozempic for you. So my first tip definitely is getting your labs. Second would be if your insulin is off and you have not been prescribed metformin, try to get metformin. That's kind of your entryway into managing your insulin resistance. No matter what medication that ends up being needed later on, the first step is usually metformin. And it really does just support if you are needing to have more medication later on down the road, like I did. So by initially starting with metformin, it wasn't really helping my levels. So my insulin was still really high. My blood glucose was really high. My A1C was really high. So because of all of that, they really had to monitor me. Also getting your lipids checked so they can monitor your kidneys. I had issues in all of those areas, and my doctor really needed me to get this under control. In order to get my labs on track, he decided to add another medication on top of metformin for me because we needed a little more support getting me in the right direction. So from there, he prescribed jardiance. Now, if you are insulin resistant and you have PCOS, jardiance is actually a really good drug. I initially started taking it in August, and by October, I had lost a little over 15 pounds. Now, that has been more than what I've lost on Ozempic. So how that medication works is you end up urinating a lot of the excess sugar out. That's how it gets rid of that sugar in your body, is by peeing it out, which can cause some discomfort. It can cause some UTIs, some yeast infections. So you really have to be careful when you're taking that medication. You clean your area, clean that very well, make sure there's no sugar on your and just really, really be careful. But if you are someone who is prone to recurrent UTIs, then you do not want to take this medication at all. And with my doctor, he said that if I got more than 3 UTIs, he would kick me off of this medication. So it's a really good drug that does work very well, especially if you want to lose weight and you want to get your A1C under control. So if it were up to me and I was able to tolerate the medication as far as the UTIs go, I would have stayed on it, to be honest, because it was really good and I had 0 side effects. So for me, that was probably the way to go. But because of the UTIs, and I started getting a lot of skin issues because I do have eczema, this sugar coming out was just not a good mixture for me personally. So I ended up getting off of it. I told him I wanted to wait about a month to just get my skin under control, get this medication out of my system. And then I went back to him almost 2 months later. And then that's when he suggested we try Ozempic because it would be once a week and I would just have to deal with managing some GI issues, which I was already used to by taking metformin. So I agreed on that one. I didn't even really know about Ozempic. I didn't know that it causes weight loss. And like I said, to be honest, when I was on Jardiance, I noticed it right away. Ozempic, it takes a little time. So that's kind of how I ended up getting Ozempic. And I don't think I would have got this medication if it wasn't for my doctor really documenting and tracking my labs. So that's why I say really make sure that your doctor is checking your labs routinely and following how severe your insulin resistance is. If you can't get any labs drawn by your primary care, ask your gynecologist. I had to do that for a couple of years because my PCP was not the best at the time. Now I have a really good one. I have a good primary care and I have a really good gynecologist, and they both are focused on PCOS. So that's another tip, is just making sure that your doctor is educated on PCOS and the insulin resistance that comes from PCOS. Because it's not just all about insulin resistance. It's just really helpful for your doctor to know about those things. That's one of the main questions I always have when I'm starting out with a new doctor is, are you familiar with the treatment of PCOS and insulin resistance? Because I want to make sure that I'm getting the care from someone who really understands my diagnosis. And sometimes you'll have to go through doctors, you know, it's okay. It's not a good fit, or they're not really understanding your condition. I have a friend, and she's probably watching this, and I'm sorry, but who had that issue with her primary care. She would always just tell her to lose weight, just lose weight, just lose weight. She was never offered metformin. She was never offered jardiance. And her labs, I don't really think that they were monitored as much. So in the long run, when your doctor is just not very in touch and aware with what conditions that you have, it can be harmful for you because you might not get the full 100% treatment that you need to manage this. So just do your homework with your doctor. Make sure that you choose the right one that knows about you. And then really push, even if you have to request it, because there's a lot of doctors that won't willy-nilly run your labs to the extent that I kind of like. I want to know if I'm deficient in anything. I want to know my lipids. I want to know my insulin numbers. So I push for all of that. Now I have a primary care who is very much involved in maintaining my health. And that's just, it works perfectly. I go in every 6 months for certain labs. I'll go in every 3 months for another set of labs. And at one point when my blood pressure was crazy, he had me going in every 2 weeks just to have them check my blood pressure. But how I ended up getting approved was that I ended up starting off on a generic medication, which was metformin. And then from there, my doctor checked my labs, saw that no improvement was happening, and he needed to add another medication. And that went a little bit higher. That was a more mid-range medication, which was Jardiance. From Jardiance, I went to Ozempic because Jardiance and Ozempic are kind of the same equivalent as far as getting that approved by your insurance. They're both tier 2 medications, so they're more mid-range. They're not just going to hand out these medications willy-nilly. They really want to make sure that they're going to be beneficial to you and that you need them. So My advice is if you do not take metformin, maybe try taking metformin, seeing how your labs look. Or if you do take metformin, really make sure that your doctor is following your labs and that they are documenting in your chart the progress or the lack of progress, because that is all going to help the type of medication that they prescribe for you. So that is how I ended up getting Ozempic approved. And I hope that that was a little helpful and the process that kind of went with it. Some insurances, sure, maybe they will approve Ozempic and you don't even have to start off on metformin. So that is why I wanted to mention that metformin is usually the primary one to kind of get you in the door of getting medications in general. And then also that there are other options. It's not just Ozempic that helps you lose weight and that manages your insulin resistance. I truly do suggest if you want to lose some weight and you want to get your A1C under control and your other labs under control, look into Jardiance. It is a pill. You do have to take it once a day. So I hope that that was helpful in some ways. I know it's extremely frustrating having to justify that you have PCOS and insulin resistance and you need a medication to regulate it. But the truth is sometimes you just have to push to get your proper care. So don't be afraid to speak up. Do not be afraid to speak up and ask for those labs and just get things going that way. But that is all I have for you. I just wanted to throw this out there because I've been getting a ton of questions about it. I will see you in the next video, and do not forget to like and subscribe. It really does help me out. And if you want to see any other videos like this, just let me know by putting a comment below. All right, guys, I will see you. Bye-bye.